Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Deconversion Stories. My apologies for not being around for the past week, but as many of you probably already know, it turned out I had a rather large, and when I say large, I mean about 7.5-inch long blood clot in my leg, which is now slowly but surely going away. My leg the swelling has come down quite considerably, but I'm on double doses of blood thinners currently, which has made me quite lightheaded. And when I switch over to the single dose twice a day, I'll be a lot better. So I can't drink today. So I've got water, and my friend Tom here has some juice because he just doesn't drink. But anyways, now you know why. I had to reschedule both my shows from last week to a future date in August. So when you'll still be able to get to see them when that rolls around. But thank you guys anyways for showing up for today. My guest today is Tom, also known as RatAlley8, which is his. Is that your YouTube tag as well, I suppose, or is that just on Twitter?
It's sort of like the DJ name that I've sort of going under.
Oh, and
I'm
I
not
said
very good, but you know, as in retaliate, a play on words sort of things, and I'm rat obsessed, as you can see in the background. I've got my rat cage there.
I see. I used to have. I had 2 rats when I was a kid. I had Einstein, and of course, the first one was named, go figure, Ben, because of the movie and all that, right? So, and then the second one I named Einstein. So, which I thought was pretty cool.
I've currently got 9.
They're going to overpopulate you, man. You get that?
Oh no, they're separated into different sexes. They're fine.
Oh, okay. Because those little buggers like to procreate like I was going to say rabbits, but you know,
yes,
that's a whole other ball of wax.
Coming to heat every 4 days.
Yeah. Anyways, you know what I do here, Tom? I talk to people about their journeys away from whatever faiths or belief systems they're once a part of. So, and I generally ask people to take us back to the earliest times that they can remember, how they kind of got indoctrinated, and then, of course, ultimately how they kind of found their way out of these belief systems. And I just ask people to sort of take us on that journey. And as you know, as I mentioned, I'll probably jump in with something utterly ridiculous to say every once in a while. So.
Right. So, well, earliest, when I was very young, I grew up in it was a sort of a big community. We shared a house with 30 other sort of tenants. And it was a big sort of hippie fest, and religion wasn't really a big part of my sort of early years,
right? Unless
I was visiting family. Like I've got one auntie. Well, shall I say it was my family is Catholic.
Okay.
And like my auntie is one of the 10 kids Catholics. Right. So she was she was always very strong with it, but it wasn't until I was about 7 when I moved from London to Cornwall, and I started attending a Catholic school. Mm-hmm. And that had nuns teaching, and obviously everything revolved around the Bible and God and things like that.
Of course.
But from the very get-go, it never quite sat right with me. I'd always be the one asking questions, you know, some that they didn't like, you know, because they couldn't answer, or there was always little elements where I could pick holes in what they were trying to teach. And it also went against a lot of the principles I'd had installed me in early years. Like my uncle, he's gay. And even though my family's Catholic, they've always been very accepting of him. And
that's really good.
Yeah, he's not.
That pleases me.
He's now married to his partner, who he's been with for 31 years. And Don
so it's about time, right?
Yeah.
It's about time they made it official. Living in sin and all.
Well, they were always both accepted in the family. You know, Don was another uncle and things, so that there's always an element where the family kind of disagreed with the doctrine and things like that, you know. So there was the things my family had instilled in me, and then I started at the Catholic school, and it was not quite what they wanted. I was the awkward child, you know. I wouldn't accept that what my uncle was doing was sin. You know, I can accept that. I was like, no, they love each other, you know, and it would cause sort of agitation in the classroom and things. And I was told to just like move on to the next thing, or just change subject sort of thing. Yeah. But yeah, there was always that element, and I tried to go along with it. I tried to pray and gain this sort of this connection with God that they all claimed.
Did you when you say you tried to do it, did you feel like you were missing out on something?
Yeah, I felt like there was something wrong with me.
Well, okay.
Because everyone else was getting this amazing experience.
Right.
But it wasn't there for me, no matter how much I tried. And it got to the point that I even started serving in the church for a short time.
Wow.
And I was in there. I was only in there about 6 months. And I actually ended up getting
6 months too long, in my opinion. But anyway,
well, I was fired. I was fired in the end.
You're just not Catholic enough.
Just not Catholic. Again, asking questions that they didn't like.
Oh, yeah.
And also, as well, my timekeeping wasn't good enough because I wasn't getting there super early. Like, I didn't show the dedication that it supposedly required. And you know, I didn't live very far away, and it was more, I think, the questions, but they had to
more likely
pin it on something else. Yeah.
They didn't want to admit that they were having issues with the questions you were asking, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, at that time, I did have some very good teachers who showed me what Christianity, you know, is what they say they're going to live their life like, because that's what it says in the Bible. But obviously, we all know very rarely do they actually live up to that. But there was some amazing teachers at that school. And one of them, you know, I was able to talk to her sort of recently, and I was sort of she was the teacher that actually took me through my first Holy Communion. She took me for the training and things. And I've been thinking about maybe talking to her about my views now and things. So we've always had a good connection. And I'd like to sort of go over a few things from back then that I sort of found sort of other people, sort of their reactions to things and why she was so different. And even though she was so strong in her faith, she had more of a sort of, she wasn't as judgmental and things. And I just found that really stuck out in that community.
Like refreshing kind of thing?
Yeah, very refreshing. She had an absolutely lovely heart, and there was nothing that would like make her think ill of you, you know. And she was a very different to a lot of the other teachers were very judgmental. Like they didn't like the fact that I had my ear pierced. Okay. And although it wasn't banned because girls were allowed to and they couldn't justify why a boy couldn't, they would quite often criticize it, you know, be like, oh, it just doesn't look right. And
just tell them you're a part-time pirate.
Well, now I'm covered in tattoos and
I see that.
I've got stretched ears, you know, and I walk around wearing T-shirts that say "Not today, Jesus."
That's awesome, by the way.
Funnily enough, it was my Catholic mother who bought it for me.
Oh, that's funny. Well, at least she's got a good sense of humor.
It was in a charity shop, so yeah.
Mock Jesus for charity. I like your mom.
But like my mum never tried to force all of the religion on me, even though I went to the Catholic school and things like that. It was always my auntie who would be the one correcting things that didn't align with the faith and making those comments like you're not going to church often enough and things like that. And she sort of it eventually got to the point that she told me that the reason why my health issues are sort of as bad as they are, because I've got multiple autoimmune issues, is because I stopped going to church. And she says that's about the time I got ill. So she's adamant that was God telling me that, I'd done something wrong.
Of course.
Because when I left the primary school, that's when I started detaching from the faith and started coming out as being atheist. Right. And it was my main experience with it was spending time with my auntie and things. Like there was a typical Catholic party where the priest is there really drunk along with all the kids who are stealing alcohol off the tables. We were introduced to alcohol very early. But there was quite often be sort of criticism from my auntie sort of saying to the priest, like, he doesn't go to church anymore, where I was then sort of singled out as the non-believer and things, and this would be after all the communions, like the first Holy Communions in the family and christenings and weddings and things like that, it would always come back and there would be a point where she would get the priest to come and scold me for sort of certain things. It's it's like you should be, why aren't you going to church, questioning me and making me feel really uncomfortable, because being like 12, 13 years old, like you're not as sort of able to vocalize it in a good enough way where you could take on a priest in a debate. It's like that took many years of being an atheist to get to that point.
Sure does, yeah.
And it was very intimidating. And I'd sort of quite often I'd make excuses and try and disappear, but
fade into the background.
yeah. But as I got older, I mean, that interest in religion, that's never faded. Right. I mean, I don't know if you know Lloyd Evans' channel.
Lloyd Evans, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I've had Lloyd on the show. Yeah.
Well, I've just got him. I just paused him as we started View. So okay. I still have that passion because it affects everything in our lives, whether we like it or not. It shapes society and things. So I've always had that passion. And as I started exploring things for myself, it started creating more rifts sort of in my life. I'd end up sort of having sort of conversations with my mum, which sort of would quite often to begin with just end in her saying, right, we're just not going to talk about religion. Like, that became like she wanted, anyways. Yes, try not to. But I was always pointing out sort of the flaws in it, and for me, one of the big things is a paedophilia problem in the Catholic Church.
Oh, I'm right there with you. And now the indigenous graves that they're finding everywhere.
Yeah. And like there's quite a few things about the teachings that really upset me. My mum had a stillborn childhood. My first brother was stillborn.
Oh, wow.
And I can remember talking to one of the nuns about how it had upset me. You know, this was a couple of years later. And she started telling me how he won't be in heaven. And he'll, you know, because obviously I'm baptized and Christians, they don't go to heaven. And that was before the Catholic Church sort of, they fluffed it up a bit in more recent years to make it seem a bit more palatable. But that didn't sit right. And
as it shouldn't sit right with you, not at all.
Yeah, and that really upset me at the time. I can remember it really affecting me. And this was during my sort of period where I was really battling with the faith, trying to force this experience on myself, and feeling like there was something wrong with me, and that's why I wasn't getting it. I was a bad person, and God didn't love me, you know, and that was literally something that I used to have in my head quite often. And
I'm sorry, bud.
It was hard, you know, and this whole time, like, these people are telling me, no, you just got to keep trying, and it's, you know, and sort of pointing out things that I should be doing as well. Like, maybe there is things I could be doing. So, you know, I was given, like, one of the nuns told me that I should make sure I say 10 Hail Marys every morning and evening. You know, and I couldn't even remember the words to it. So then again, there's something that I felt was bad. So I always struggled. And one thing, now I've had the diagnosis as being autistic, I've realized that a lot of my struggles were because all these songs, prayers and things were always said in big groups. And like the morning, I can't concentrate on big groups. I can only concentrate on one person at a time. So this meant that I could never work out remember what the words are to the prayers. So I was faking my way through loads of it, you know. I just, like, every morning and at the end of school, we all had to say our prayers sort of in the classroom. Then we'd have to say them in the dining hall. To this day, I haven't got a clue what the words to them were. I just had to fake my way through it. But I felt if I asked somebody, I would then get in trouble because it should be obvious and things. And that I was being sort of chastised for these other elements of things where I was saying things which didn't quite fit in with the belief system. And, you know, sort of saying to the class that my uncle is gay and there's nothing wrong with it and things like that. You know, that was always, once I said that first, it was always there, you know, that they showed their disapproval. You know, that was made clear. And I just hated the way that these things were just made out, you know, that it doesn't matter how much someone loves each other and things, but because a book says so, that means, you know, you're evil because you can't go along with this book. And that kind of, everything is black and white. That I was always taught, you know, everything's a spectrum. And there was always elements of them saying it's either this or this. Right. And I could always come up with things, you know, I was always coming up with sort of arguments and stuff in the class. And it was always Tom's just being a nuisance.
Of course.
That school was very, it was sort of abusive without meaning to be. Abusive with, like,
I know what you mean to say.
And I really struggled at that school with academically and things. And once I left there, you know, my academics went right up, and I've sort of got really good grades ever since then. And it just sort of makes me realize how much it was affecting me trying to go along with these teachings.
Mhm.
And it was, you know, I was a child, but it was torturing me inside because I couldn't fit in with them, but I didn't want to say it to anyone because I felt ashamed. And
Right.
it was a real battle. You know, everyone telling me that God is love, and it's I never saw that side. And finding out now that I'm autistic, and in my research, I was able to find that actually autistic people are more likely not to believe in a religion or pseudoscience, you know, like homeopathy and things like that.
Yeah.
And so now I'm finding out that it's not because I wasn't trying hard enough. It's because I haven't got that ability. I haven't got that ability to believe in something without evidence. I've always worked through the world with logic. You know, I just take step by steps and I work it out logically, and that's always been how I do things. And now I'm finding out that all this sort of internal torture I had had, you know, their answers to sort of actually it was completely out of my ability to believe in that, you know, but I was made to feel like I was the bad one.
Sure.
And I just
Catholicism.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, and that was only really sort of able to get away from, because when I sort of entered my early teens, I became very ill. So I had such a drastic separation from the church life because I was spending it all in hospital.
Oh,
and
boy.
Then my auntie would always be telling me that I need to pray more, and like, or how she's been praying for me, and she wishes that I would go to church because that would help things. You know, this was before she told me outright that I'd be better. That was the last time I spoke to her, actually, the time that she told me I'd be better if I carried on going to church.
Man.
But at that time, sort of, me and my mum had agreed not to talk about it loads and stuff. And it was pretty much a sort of big point of tension with my auntie. She'd always pick and choose her times to do things and say the sort of nasty stuff. And that sort of always kept that sort of that depression that surrounded sort of my days going to school. It kept that for years into my adulthood. But as I sort of became a lot more experienced with how to put my reasoning across to people, how to answer those awkward questions, I've done and sort of researched the topic from all sides and able to actually articulate myself a lot more rather than it's just not logical.
Right.
That sort of changed the tables a bit. And my mum in more recent years is a lot more open to me talking about certain things.
That's good.
I don't actually talk to that side of the family anymore.
Your mom's or your dad's side?
Well, it's my mum's. My dad was never around, and I didn't have when my mum married when I was 12, and my stepfather, he was, as far as I was concerned, he was my dad. He was just missing for a few years before.
Right.
But so he passed away from cancer a few years ago, so he's not around anymore.
That in common, my friends. So my condolences to you.
Yeah, but I mean, the sort of growing up in the commune and things like that, I was always used to being able to like make everyone a parent, which was quite good in some ways. I was quite open with some of my grievances about sort of the religion of things to my uncles. Like when I was at school, I did actually talk to them about what I had said to me at school. And, you know, obviously, like they weren't followers of Catholicism at all. I think it was probably a bit upsetting for them hearing this, but I felt I was able to, they were people I could talk to more about that sort of thing. I didn't talk to my mum about it at the time because I knew that it was something that she found upsetting with the church. It was sort of one of the things, like, it just wasn't, that subject wasn't really talked about in the family much. It was, it was James was gay, we could talk about that, but not how the religion
thinks about it.
Yeah, so it wasn't until I was in the school environment that,
you know, I believe myself personally, and I may be way off on this, but I believe that they don't want to talk about it because they're embarrassed about what the book says about it. Yeah. My mum,
they
don't want to confront that.
No, my mum has confronted that with the priests.
Okay.
I will say she has on a few times. She's mentioned that to me herself. But she's always been more of a sort of hippie Christian than the fundamentalist that my auntie is. Yeah. You know,
for everyone.
Like I was taken to Glastonbury Festival when I was 3 years old, and our friend's fan and things like that. You know, it was in growing up in the hippie community, like it was very off the wall childhood, and I was a lot more different than the Cornish boys and girls that were in the school that I started at. Right. You know, I had the London accent at the time. I've lost a lot of that now. So I always stood out, and then I was the one who would always be having told to stop being disruptive in RE, and I always stood out. That's for sure.
Right. Well, I have the West Coast Canadian accent, if there is one. I don't even know. But we definitely don't sound like the Midlanders, like Saskatchewan, Ontario guys, Manitoba. They all sound like everyone from Letterkenny over there. So,
well, Cornwall, even though it's become less so in more recent years, but Cornwall is where you get the pirate accent from. So you get a lot of people with that. Oh, you're right, Harry. And there's a lot of that down there. So I was always very different, and being sort of being there a couple of years after everyone else meant that I missed out on a lot of the stuff that they had enforced on them and things.
Sure.
So I guess my understanding wasn't as indoctrinated as theirs, and
probably not.
And they were quite often like, if I ever done anything wrong, like if someone would see it, they'd always tell on me. So I was the disruptive kid. I was the naughty kid. And but you know, it was very much made apparent that I was slightly different to everyone else.
You got another rat fan here.
Rats are the best. There's rats.
They make great pets. Rats rule. I like it. I had every pet my mother didn't want me to have. Snakes, tarantulas, rats, mice, you know, that kind of thing. So
I've had a dog and rats, and that's about it myself. That's it. I've had to deal with my neighbour. My 71-year-old neighbour has got a boa that has been needing to go to the vets recently, so I've been dealing with that. That's one thing. Since moving to Cornwall, one of the good things I have loved is living in the countryside, and there's a lot of animals. Even lived on a farm for a few years and stuff. And then my stepdad had a farm as well, so then lived there as well.
Is his name Old MacDonald, or?
But I can remember when my mum married him, it was always, even though the priest had he was very good to my dad, and he was very respectful of him and things like that.
That's good.
But I felt like it was pointed out the fact that he had married before and he wasn't a Catholic himself, meant that they weren't allowed to get married in the church, and that was something that I felt was sort of quite a big bad point for me at the time. I was about 12 or 13 then, so
why
it was
did you
after.
think it was a bad thing?
Because because my dad wasn't what they deemed worthy.
Oh, I got you.
My mum got them to have a blessing on the marriage, but the priest wouldn't marry them himself. So they had to get married by a public official.
That's okay. Still legal.
But no, it was the way that it was upsetting to my mum, and she seemed, because she was the Catholic and things, and she was really the only one it would matter to. But the way that they were singled out, and because even though the priest was happy to bless the marriage, because the religion didn't deem him worthy, they wouldn't do that in the church. And I just hated the whole way that it demonizes people that aren't sort of followers of the faith, and demonizes people for the smallest infractions.
Sorry about that.
You lost you for a minute then.
Yeah, I know. I hit the wrong button. I'm back though.
But
I do that sometimes. I blame it on the medication.
Oh yeah, I do that quite a lot. It's a handy fallback.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, it was just another example of how I saw the religion causing harm.
Right.
And it was one thing realizing that I don't believe that God exists and being able to vocalize that, but I could never stop seeing the harm that it was causing around me.
Right.
Which led to my auntie getting very abusive in the end, which culminated in her telling me that if I'd continued going to church, I wouldn't be ill now, and
right, sure.
That was the final sort of straw at that point. Right. But when that had happened, she had also gone around sort of bad-mouthing me to everybody. So I just felt it easier to just break away from all that.
Very good.
Which, it was then sort of, even though me and my mum had sort of agreed not to talk about it at times, I wouldn't always keep to that. So I'd always point out to her when there was a paedophilia case and the church had been found covering things up and things like that. And sort of, she doesn't go to church as much anymore. I don't know if she goes at all, but I know she doesn't go as much. And I think, has lost faith in the system, but not in the belief, sort of thing. That's how I feel that she sees it. But it has become easier to talk to her about it in more recent years. And sorry, I'm just reading.
Yep, go ahead. That's why I popped this up there.
Yeah, 47 years. It's amazing how people like Anthony Hopkins going until more recent years and not realizing that he's got autism until, that sort of age, because realizing that I'm autistic has opened up so many sort of things that I just didn't know about myself, because I've been able to research it
Right.
realizes that I thought I've just got little quirks, you know, like the whole
We
not
all
being
have little quirks. Let's be honest.
exactly, but I don't know. I was always felt different. It wasn't just
Sure.
at the school. It was always I always felt different, and yeah, getting that diagnosis, I was able to learn about myself and becoming more accepting in myself.
See, yeah,
You know.
which I think that's the wonderful thing about finding out something like that. Now you know where you're sort of at, so to speak, and you can learn how to adjust to liking yourself more. And you don't have to wonder why the fuck, right? So it's so much better.
There's some amazing resources like YouTube stuff as well has been amazing for me.
Yeah.
And
That's
also like doing like the sort of research and things into it, like finding out that autistic people are less likely to sort of believe in religion and pseudoscience.
Yeah.
But then you've got the opposite end where you've got some autistic people who like the whole, you know, the routine of it and the repetition and things like that. And there's
autism's a wide spectrum, right? So
yeah. Well, there's some speculation that a lot of autistic people would have gone into the church in the past.
Right.
Because another thing with autism, you're also more likely to have a different sexuality than sort of, you know, I can't remember the sort of cis heterosexual sort of relationship. So you get a lot of asexual people who've autistic.
Right.
So they would have found, you know, peace in the church because then they're not forced to, you know, because to have a family and things. So it was a sort of sanctuary for a lot of autistic people, but there's also a lot of stories out there showing how much it's tortured a lot of autistic people and how they've fought inside trying to find this sort of connection with the religion that everybody around them is telling them they have, and it's not there, and that information isn't available to enough people to help people find love for themselves and realize that it's not something that's wrong with them. I'm because of my experiences, I would say I'm anti-theist. Mm-hmm. I don't see any good that comes out of religion that you can't get somewhere else. And
for sure, I agree with you 100% on that. By the way, I hate the term anti-theist because it gets misunderstood so often. That term in and of itself, a lot of times it makes theists think that you're against them personally.
Yeah, no. I
use the term anti-theism, like anti.
Yes, that's that. Yes, I would say that would be a bit more clearer to my point of view. It's the system, not the community.
Of course,
yeah.
They're victims too, right? Well, victims, in a way.
I mean, the leadership, I could say that about, but not the believers themselves.
Yeah. I could get.
I mean, my nana, she was a good Catholic. She had a good heart. She would help everybody.
Did she wear mixed linens?
well, yes.
Well.
But then, you know, that's not enforced by the system at the moment. They're more
the whole institution's doomed then.
They're more interested on whether you use condoms or not. You know, it's to them that kind of thing is sort of outdated. Exactly. Now it's gay people, condoms.
Yeah.
But
they accepted evolution too, right? So pretty soon they're gonna accept so many things. They're gonna go, well, what the fuck do we believe in anymore? Something like that. Yes.
Well, they're losing members at a very high rate. I'm not sure if they're taking in more than they're losing at the moment. But a lot of the claims of how many Catholics there are in the world is based on christenings, on baptisms. You know, most of those aren't going to still be in the church. But you can't sign yourself off. Once listed, always listed.
Mm-hmm.
And the numbers they preach really don't match sort of what is reality, I don't think.
Real quick here, this is for Amy, because Amy likes to give out hearts all the time. And I hear you, Hans. I was into parapsychology too. I wanted to be a Ghostbuster once.
See, I was always interested in that kind of thing, but it was always the skepticism side of things.
Yeah, I was going into it with a skeptical sort of attitude too.
Yeah.
And if something I couldn't explain seemed to be, then I go, well, that must be something real. But I don't even think that anymore because I don't believe in an afterlife. Period.
Yeah. I've got no belief, and that was always something I felt. I didn't feel any reason why there would be. And yeah, I mean, although one thing, I like our family, we have been very accepting of death. It's never been treated as something entirely morbid. It's always been just a part of life,
of course,
sort of thing. So
the end of life, technically, right?
I was never scared of death.
Yeah, me either. I was at one time, but not anymore.
So the whole life after death thing, it wouldn't bother me this way or that. Want to be a Ghostbuster? I think everyone wants to be a Ghostbuster.
There you go. Hey, X, how you doing?
But I think the last time I went to church was for a funeral. But I haven't been inside one for a few years now.
Mm-hmm. There you go. I'm not scared
of death.
That's how I look at it. I'm not finished yet. I don't want to go yet. And I tell you, that's that whole scare with the blood clot the other day that I found out I had this 7.5 inch or 7 inch long blood clot in my leg. Scared the crap out of me. So.
Yeah. I mean, even though I've got sort of multiple things wrong with me, I still get scared. Yeah, it's the not knowing as well that I find while you're waiting for the diagnosis.
As long as I go in my sleep, I'll never fucking know what happened, right? So.
One thing my auntie used to do that used to get to me is when I was in hospital, she would quite often contact the local parish, the Catholic parish, to get a nun to come and visit me, get one of the nuns from the local convent to come and visit me in the hospital. And I ended up getting the nurses on the ward to just tell them that I was too ill and like that they weren't allowed to see me and stuff. No, he's in quarantine at the moment. And
okay. I thought you were going to say something like more sponge baths.
No. I never quite got the sponge baths apart from when I was apart from the times that I had my colostomy bag and I was lying there covered in my own feces.
Oh, lovely.
I even had it when I was.
Yeah, at least it was your feet. It'd be worse if it was someone else's.
Oh yeah, well I've had that as well. I've got lots of brothers and sisters.
Oh, they're monkeys or something? They just whip and poo at you, or what?
No, they're all a lot younger than. They're all a lot younger than me.
Oh,
so. Changing nappies and the likes of that.
I've seen that series. Oh, so, nerdy. I'm okay. I got in there early enough to have it found and dealt with. I'm on Equilus, I think it's called. It's a Baxapan and whatever the fuck. It's one of the newer blood thinners that's really, really good. And I'll be on it for 3 months, and then they'll reassess. I'll probably won't need to be on it again, but if something does appear, I'll have to go back on them for a little while. So,
how did you discover that?
Well, I noticed one day that my left calf and foot was twice the size of my right calf and foot. And I'm like, that's not right. I mean, I know our bodies are proportionally different left and right, but that's not right. So I'm like, I don't know. Maybe it'll go away. Did I get stung? I'm looking for a bee sting somewhere. There's no itching. It didn't hurt. It wasn't red to the touch or hot or anything. So I didn't have the typical symptoms, but it was stiff. Like I could barely move it. So I basically called my doctor. I said, Doc, my left calf and foot are like way swollen. He goes, well, it could be because I have a little bit of arthritis issues, right? He said, well, it could be related to the arthritis. Sleep on it overnight. And if it's still like that in the morning, get to the hospital right away. And so I already set everything up with my friend Randolph, who picked me up and took me over there. And I got in there, and they did an ultrasound. And they checked out, and they came back. And I was in there for like hours, taking blood tests and whatnot. She goes, yeah, you have deep vein thrombosis, which is a bad thing. If it had popped, it could have gone into my lungs and my heart, and that would have been it. Game over.
Yeah.
So I'm still here, suckers. But nerdy. Oh, my foot hurts now. Sorry, man. Sorry.
I keep a pair of compression stockings from my last hospital visit, just in case I'm going on a plane trip.
I got to pick up some. A buddy of mine told me where he got a couple of really, really good pairs. So I'll check it out and get a couple. They're like $30-$40 each, but you know what? If I buy a couple pairs, no big deal, right?
Over here, if you're staying in hospital, they make you wear them. So so you get given multiple pairs during a stay. So get them for free over here. But then we have got the NHS, which sort of it's been a good godsend for me, shall we say?
Happy to still have you. Thanks, Jonathan. Besides, I haven't had your crepes yet. I'm not going until that happens. Anyway, yes, Amy, Randolph is my guardian angel. No, I don't believe in that shit. But he's there for me every time I need him, for sure. And I'm there for him, too, because we live like 15, 20 minutes apart from each other. So same with Simply Secular Dave, who moved into our neck of the woods, too. So, yeah, carry on, my friend.
That's one thing I'm lucky for down here. I've got a very good community around me. That's fantastic. Even there's a sort of evangelical type church just around the corner from me.
It hasn't been burnt down yet? Because apparently they're doing that everywhere.
No. Jason, the pastor, he's very well respected because, well, the first time I spoke to him, he was in town street preaching. And just asked to pray for me. So I told him my beliefs, and told him I wasn't a believer and stuff. He's never brought up religion since. A couple of 100 miles from Nerdy Ronan. Well, come and meet my rats if you want.
There you go. Invitation has been extended.
I'm always happy to show off my rats. As you can tell, because I've got it on my knuckles, I'm a little bit obsessed.
What do you mean, who's Randolph? Screw you, Nick. Oh, I'll make goddamn cake out of them if you promise not to die. Crepe cake.
But I'm thinking of possibly sending a link to this video to that teacher I was telling you that I got on with, who helped me through my first aid of communion. I think that she would be open to talking, I think.
Very good, because that's we need someone like that around, especially when the rest of them you're surrounded by are not that way, right?
Well, yeah. I think it would. I want to talk to her about how autistic people sort of have a different sort of experience with religion and stuff as well, because I think working as a primary school teacher, I think it's quite important that they understand these things so that other people don't have to live their sort of childhood feeling like there's something wrong with them.
Right.
Because that was a big, big thing for me. I felt for years that I wasn't good enough. I was always doing things wrong. And it was being at that Catholic school was just took down every other part of my life, and it really brought me down at the time. I was there for 4 years in total, I think. And the difference is I remember before and then after. And my general mental state was a lot better, not being there. And the nuns especially, I found they just had no empathy.
I hear that a lot, actually. So
it was just purely what the Bible says and everything else is wrong. And again, like because I mean, they had no understanding of any sort of additional needs. But finding out the things that I found out now, I just feel like I sort of have a bit of a responsibility to try and get this information out there.
Mm-hmm.
And although they're not going to take it as, oh, well, that's if they're not going to believe, or they're not going to sort of force them or anything. I just hope that maybe if I did reach out, that it could change how that child is treated or how they're spoken to. But then I'm also scared in some ways of what sort of reaction I would get.
Right.
I've still got that Catholic guilt to everything.
Yeah, it's hard to let that go sometimes, right? So
yeah,
it's so ingrained into you, right? So
yeah, you know,
which is unfortunate,
especially sort of going to confession. I found that very daunting, daunting,
no,
and you know, and if I felt like I didn't have anything to say, I would make stuff up because I felt like I was expected to confess my sins.
Mm-hmm.
But as a kid, I didn't always have sins, apart from maybe like told my mother that I want that sweet now. So I would end up going in and I'd have to go and say 5 Hail Marys because I didn't say thank you for sweets. Or
yeah, because that'll help.
it just added to that whole sort of torment.
Why did the priest just go say thank you? Say, hey, I forgot to the other day. Thank you for the service.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah. I mean,
I got to fucking drag Mary into this for.
I don't think it really matters what they say to you. I mean,
no,
they would take a murderer's sins. They'd let a murderer confess to them and treat them the same sort of way. I think it's just the whole routine. You've got to go in there and you've got to make amends. You've got to take your penance, you know. Even if you haven't done anything wrong, you've got to get penance. Otherwise, there's something wrong with you. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I guess that's the guilt side again, isn't it? It's
yeah, for sure.
I mean, I'm trying to talk to my mother more about sort of religion again. Mm-hmm. I do think I see her now being more for the faith, not the system.
Good. That's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, because she does have a lot of things that I would say she doesn't follow. And yeah, it's not like, you know, my auntie who everything she's ever done in her life has been for the church, based around the church. And
of course it has.
I just count myself lucky that I was never one of her children.
Yeah, no doubt, right?
Because I can remember I was talking about my uncles, the gay ones, and I was talking about them to my cousins, and one of their school friends was there, and they kicked off at me because I mentioned that our uncle was gay in front of their school friend.
Wait, what? Why?
Yeah, because they were embarrassed. They said they didn't want people at school knowing.
Fuck off.
And even though they would treat Don, you know, as one of the family and all that sort of thing, they would be going behind his back and sort of being ashamed of it, sort of thing. I've always been one to be like, you know, I wear my heart on my sleeve. Mm-hmm. I say things straight, and if you can't accept that, then, you know, whatever. Like, but it was again another element where the religion, because they were at a Catholic secondary school, because so they had not just the primary education like we have down here, because there was no Catholic secondary school here. Otherwise, I probably would have gone to one. Yeah. But they had that indoctrination a lot later on in life, and even though they sort of,
I have a theory. I think there's no secondary schools, more than likely. There may actually be some somewhere, but I think it's because a lot of times when you've got the kids through the primary school years, so you've already got them. There's no need for the later years. They could just go off because now you got them in there. And when they hit that age anyways, if they weren't already believers, you'll never turn them into one, right? Because they're already cognitive function. Right? So.
Well, they were never, like my cousins, they weren't against gay people. They was, they'd be one to share pride flags and things now.
Okay, that's good.
But they wouldn't admit it to their community. It wasn't, they wouldn't be vocal about it and things.
See, to me, that's still homophobic.
Yeah. I mean, but this was the 90s, so like that was mild compared to what some people were like at the time.
Yeah.
But it was still, that really upset me as well. That was something that really upset me. And I ended up having an argument with the cousin at the time about what they had said about that. And yeah, I mean, the secondary schools in the UK that are run by the Catholics are generally in the cities. So where I am, they don't have it. There's like one big school per town sort of thing. So there isn't the sort of money in it for the Catholics to make it worthwhile doing their own. There isn't any religious secondary schools, actually.
Good. Good.
That I know
Don't
of
need
down
them.
there. No. I do think that religious schools need to be taken away completely. Because I don't feel like a nun is necessarily equipped to do that job.
Oh, I agree.
Especially like the lack of empathy that is all too common with nuns. I think it causes a lot of problems. I've got a friend who she's now come out as being gay and things, but
good for her. She
went to the same primary school and grew up in that same environment, and she had a very similar experience to what I've said in the way that it made her feel and things. And like it wasn't a loving, nurturing atmosphere like a school should be at all. It was everything was about the Bible. It doesn't matter if you couldn't do your homework as long as you did your RE.
Oh, for fuck's sakes.
I mean,
it's not going to help you in biology.
No. Or like with me, I had problems with writing. Right. I couldn't actually write properly until I was about 10. Okay. I really struggled. I used to have practice and things like that. But because all the focus was put on the religion side of things, my educational needs were largely dismissed. And because I was so vocal in the RE lessons, it made them seem to not try and help me as much at times, because it would fluctuate. They'd be nicer to me on one day than others, and it would generally relate to what I've raised in RE at the time. Some days they'd be a lot nicer to me. Some days,
Right.
But everything with my experience with the religion has been filled with guilt, fear, and a lot of feelings of inadequacy.
No doubt.
It really took me for years to actually sort of be more at peace with myself.
All because of it, eh?
Well, becoming able to talk about what I believe, why I believe it, and things like that, learning who I am inside, by getting the autism diagnosis, it's given me a lot more sort of punching power. And I feel a lot more at peace with myself, and I don't feel like
that's great.
I've detached myself from a lot of the guilt that I grew up with. And I've become a lot more accepting of things that I was chastised for at school. Like, I don't know if you know what stimming is.
I've heard the expression.
It's the repetitive movement. You know, when you see people with additional needs or mental health issues, and they'll be rocking or things like that. One of mine was tapping and things, and it helps me concentrate. But I was always taught that it was a bad. Oh no, I'm a sound engineer.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah, no, I work in live sound. I can't do this. I can't do the performing on stage. I do the bit at the back of the room, and
that's great.
And yeah, that's helped me become a lot more at ease for myself, because I've got something that I can show off about. You know, I've got a skill that is quite well respected and things. Excellent. So I've broken away from that feeling of inadequacy that I had instilled in me. I mean, my mum, she hasn't really sort of been a bad part of sort of the religious experience in her ways. She never forced me too much. She just didn't want to talk about the other side.
Sure.
You know. But I mean, as you can tell, as I said, she bought me this T-shirt. We've come a very long way. We've come a very long way from what we used to be like. But yeah, that inadequacy, it bugs me every day. As you can tell, I keep going back to it. It's something that really tormented me, and I see it tormenting so many other people all the time. And
people that cared about you, obviously.
Yeah. Well, tormenting other people who've sort of been in the same position.
Right.
You know, who've had that same experience and not knowing why and feeling like they're bad people. And I honestly don't feel like I can say I've experienced any good that's come from the religion in my life. Nothing has stood out in any way that I would say has been a good thing that I could take away from that whole experience. Wow. And it's why I'm so against these religious systems, and
they're oppressive.
They are very oppressive. And I think that it's becoming a lot clearer how badly it affects people. I think with the internet,
Billy's a sound guy too. So.
Oh, cool! Yeah, it's an industry that's got a lot of autistic people in, and I actually count my sensory processing issues for being a very big part in why I sort of can do what I do. But yeah, little plug, KMF Radio, Kerno Music Foundation, is who I do a radio show with a guy on there on Fridays, and we do events. So all the money that we earn from doing events and equipment hire and stuff goes back into the community radio station and provides equiment for all members of the community to be able to have that. So I've got involved with it because my brother Rory, he's got Down syndrome, and he was part of it before. So the manager of the radio station had been pestering me for years to come and get involved and stuff. So yeah, I'm now one of the management down there.
Nice.
And things. So yeah.
I'll tell you what. After we're done here, which we should probably wrap up pretty quick because we're already past the hour. Send me those any relevant links to that, like your radio show, the station, or whatever, and I'll add them to the description box. Because really, I think all I have here for you is a Twitter handle.
Yeah. There's not much on that, I don't think, as well. I'll send those over.
Excellent. Is there anything else you want to just quickly mention, or?
No. I think I just keep going back to the same point. It's the one poignant thing that I take away from the religion is just that feeling of inadequacy that it's just instilled in me.
Many feel that way, though.
Yeah.
And that's what keeps them. Well, you're not good enough. Oh shit, I'll get better. And then they're never good enough, right?
Yeah,
it's like an unattainable goal, is what it is.
Yeah, and you've got to just continuously jump through hoops.
Yeah. Well, just keep putting the hoops higher and higher and higher. So eventually, no one's going to be jumped through those hoops.
Well, that's why a lot of religions are losing members in high numbers. I mean, Jehovah's Witnesses, especially.
Yeah, and Mormons.
They're losing. Yeah. I think because of a lot of the work by sort of cult experts and things to bring it out so people actually understand that harmful side.
White model.
Yeah. I was just recommending that to a YouTuber yesterday because I felt like their definition, they used the old Webster's Dictionary definition of cult. So I mentioned the bite model, and maybe they should look into that. But it's definitely the understanding, I think, into how destructive these systems can be. I think it's definitely becoming a lot more prominent and understood.
They are. Which I'm happy about.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
Well, Tom, as you guys know, I'm on a whole bunch of meds, and I got my COVID shot yesterday too. So I'm actually doing my best to do this. So we're going to delay the after party because I just need to get back to resting, guys. But the next time I do a early show, I've already told Tom I'll let him know days ahead of time so that he'll be ready and he can jump in, and we'll have like a dual after party for whoever my guest at that time is. So I apologize, guys, but I don't have it in me to keep going. So I got to rest up and deal with this. So yeah, but Tom, I want to thank you very much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And once again, I'm sorry about the first attempt we made. I hope I've made up for it tonight.
You absolutely did. I knew it was going to be great anyway. So yeah, we all have our lives. Shit happens. And even my whole schedule was erased somehow. I don't even know how the hell it happened. Luckily, I had some recent photos that I often post, as you've seen in your messenger, stuff like that, but I didn't have them all there.
Yeah.
Right. So I forgot a few. So I rescheduled other people. And then when they go, it's almost time, I'm like, shit. I've already got and then I explain what happened. They go, so we reschedule. So I'm pretty much taking care of all the ones that I screwed up on.
Well, I've just set up a family Dropbox for that, so I can back everything up to the family account.
Excellent.
And then everything's safe then.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you guys. I am going to take care of myself. Also, thank you guys for hanging out with us today. I know it's a little earlier than usual, so I appreciate you showing up early today. Much love to everyone in the chat there. And it's just, a few quick mentions like I always do. First off, my patrons, thanks to all my absolutely amazing patrons. You guys really are the reason I can keep doing this. So I thank you for everything that you do to support the show. And I've already mentioned Randolph earlier. So we are starting our own call-in show fairly soon. Well, we're still building the studio. So I'm not going to say fairly soon anymore. Eventually, you'll see us on YouTube talking to other people. So watch out for that. Head over to the channel and sub, or you can find out more at www.truenorthtalk.ca, which will actually lead you to the Canadian Atheists link as well, where I am the community advocate and Randolph is the president of. And although I'm not doing any for the next while, they've told me that I'm not allowed to do any of these shows for the next while until I'm healed up. So they don't want me adding any more stress to myself right now. But I am one of the new co-hosts of the revamped and relaunched Nonprofits, one of the ACA products. And it usually airs between 3 and 4 p.m. between the Talk Heathen and Atheist Experience. So if you're ever interested in that show, it's a lot of fun and there's a lot of great people involved. So head over to the Nonprofits channel and check that out as well. And of course, last but not least, the last Saturday of every month, we do a little show called Atheist Drinking Out Loud. And now, of course, I won't be drinking probably. Well, it depends. I can't drink right now because I'm on double dose of the blood thinners. So I'm staying away from the alcohol. But once I go into a regular regimen of 1 twice a day, my doctor said I could probably get away with having I'll be here if you nurse the shit out of it. So I'll probably have one for the one coming up, and if I'm still on them, just one for the one after that. We're still sort of rounding things up for the end of July, who we're going to have on. We've already had people like my good friends there, X and Nick Suter, and the last guest was Bionic Dance. And we do have a lot of show. It's Seamus from the Free Thought Prophets and Andy, who does the Laughing in Disbelief channel, where the show actually airs. So head over to there and give them a sub there too. And again, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us. I hope you guys enjoyed today's show. And Tom, it was a pleasure, my friend. Stay in touch with me on Twitter, and I'll let you know exactly when we're going to do this dual after party. Okay?
Thank you. Yes, I look forward to it.
Get
well soon.
Thank you, my friend. And thanks to everyone for all your well wishes as well. And, well, you know what I do. The outside of this, I always say, like the late, great Christopher Hitchens once said, it's called faith because it's not knowledge. And we'll see you guys next time.